gunsmith is what you're thinking of. A gunsmith would make things for the army, like the bullets that they would use and things like that. Or the barrel of a gun. That would be a gunsmith that would work with those types of metals, and that's considered a specialty. There's some other metal specialties. You have a farrier. Who knows what a farrier is? Have you guys heard of that term before? A farrier is somebody who would make horseshoes for horses and special nails to nail those horseshoes on the horses. Most blacksmiths knew how to do horseshoes, and they could and would do them if they needed to, but they would usually leave that work to a farrier because that's what they specialized in, and that was the only thing they did. But blacksmiths would make all kinds of other tools and implements. A blacksmith would make anything from a sewing needle, a tiny little sewing needle, to nails to build your house, to big cages, metal cages if they needed to, and all kinds of tools.
How many times do you clean that?
You'll have to watch. It takes a long time to change the shape of that hot metal. See how it started turning black when he took it out and worked on it for a minute? It starts to cool and then it gets harder. So then he has to put it back in the forge to heat it up again. So if you were new to the United States during colonial times, like when the Pilgrims first came over, and you needed to build a house, what would you need? Nails. What else would you need?
Wood.
Okay, hinges. That's a great one. Blacksmiths made a lot of hinges. They made door hinges. They made door latches as well. Okay, those were usually made out of wood, but sometimes, I don't remember at what point they had locks that you could turn, and those would have been made out of metal. But definitely hinges, if you had shutters that you would open and close, those hinges would be made in a blacksmith shop. So all those things you would go to a blacksmith for to have those made. They didn't have a Home Depot, they didn't have a place like that or a store that you could run to get those things. You can see how big that piece of metal is and how many that machine over there was pounding really, really hard on that metal, and it couldn't even flatten it out immediately. It would take a long time. Can you imagine how long it would take to make a tiny sewing needle out of a big piece of metal? It would take a long time, wouldn't it? He's making a decorative piece of metal. They call it a rope twist. And he's just showing you a technique. We're hoping, but we're not sure yet. So we'll see at the end of the day.
Keep working it until the end of Patriot.
That's what we're working on. So, hold on. A family that would go to the blacksmith shop just to get a sewing needle. He would make a sewing needle, and that one needle, guess how many families would share that one sewing needle?
5.
That's a good guess, but no. Close?
7.
Nope.
9.
Closer?
9.
10. 10 families would share one tiny sewing needle. Can you imagine? And do you think that they took really good care of that one sewing needle? Absolutely, because it could be really hard to get another one or take a long time before they could get another one. So they always took care of all of their tools very, very well. Yes?
Wouldn't it be bad to have a plastic, the little hairs on the brush, wouldn't it be bad to have it plastic because it could
Yeah,
burn and
it
stuff?
wouldn't work if it was plastic. It would totally melt.
Those are,
That's all metal on that brush.
oh.
Yeah, it's metal.
To make that, you have a blacksmith. A blacksmith has to make it before you can use it.
Yeah.
Wow. Good luck. Making that.
They would have to use metal and they'd have to forge it. See how it's a little cricket at the end? Watch what he does with the hammer after he uses the brush to get all those scalings off. If it's still hot enough, he'll try to hammer it out and flatten it out. If it's too cold, see, he puts it back in the forge to heat it up again.
Why does it change shape?
It only changes shapes when he bends it or hammers it.
It looks like a square.
Yep.
I know, it's square.
Yeah, there's more than one in the forge.
What's the gray stuff?
The gray stuff is the metal as it cools. And that's the very outer edges of the metal. As it cools, it flakes off like that as he bends it. And that's why he uses the brush to brush all those off.
What would that make the little piece used for?
You could use it to make a railing if it was a longer piece. Have you ever seen a railing like in a house or on stairs and they're twisted iron? That's how they do that. Pretty cool, huh? To heat it up so he can flatten it, he can make it straighter. Okay, let's talk about some other things that a blacksmith would make. Okay, yep. Who knows what this is?
That's a J hook.
You're good. You've been to a blacksmith shop before, haven't you? That's awesome. Where did you do it?
I use Scout Ranch.
Awesome. This is a J hook, just like he said. And what end would you put into the wall?
That part.
This end right here, yeah. And then you could hang your hat or your rifle or your coat or whatever you needed to hang up, you could hang on that hook. These are sharp, so please be very, very careful. Be careful as you're passing it around. Please be really careful that you're not hitting your neighbor or anything, okay? But if you're really careful, I'll let you pass them around and look at them. Who knows what this is? That's a good guess. We would call that a fork as well. But yeah, it is a regular fork.
3 kinds of forks.
There are several kinds of forks, aren't there? I love that kids learn etiquette and know that there's more than one type of fork. That's awesome. This was a fork, and if you look at the handle, there's a special technique they use to make this handle. It's a decorative technique. It's called pineapple technique. And they would use that to make their implements and tools look a little fancier. This is a spoon. Can you imagine eating your cereal in the morning with a spoon like this? It probably wouldn't be very good.
It would taste like metal.
Yeah. Aren't you glad we have better things today? Who knows what this is?
Is that a flint striker?
They call it a fire steel. And so they would hold it in their hands like this, and they would have a piece of flint, which is a special rock, and they would strike that rock, and what would happen? They would get a spark. What would they use the spark for? To make fire. Do you think that was important to have?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They didn't have matches. So that was a very important tool to have, no matter where you were. Who knows what this is for? It's coming around. I know, right? A P, a Q. Depends on how you hold it. Yeah, a 9. This would be a
hammer. It looks like a hammer.
You are so close. Closest we've had today. It would go into the wall like this, and then you would put your candle in here in the little loop. It's a candle holder. So it would hold the candle into the wall, but far enough out that you wouldn't burn your house down. Those were pretty important to have too, don't you think? Thank you. Okay, try to make, can you pass that back to her, please? We still have that. Okay, when I pass this around, I want you to see if you can untwist it. Okay? This is one that Ty just made today. Can you untwist it? Pull it and try to see if you can untwist it.
Nope.
Okay, so really quick, because I forgot to tell you this earlier, some of the most important tools that a blacksmith has are his hammer, his tongs, and his anvil. And you'll see him working on it. See how he's trying to flatten that out, straighten it out a little bit?
Where did he put those things that are done?
Look what he does now. See how he puts it in the water? The water cools off the metal. It turns it black. And it also tests the quality or integrity of the project that he's working on. So if something was going to fail, it'll fail when it comes out of the water. Sometimes if you didn't heat it up properly or treat it properly, it'll bend or crack, and that means you have weakness in whatever you were working on, and he would have to start over again. Who remembers how hot the forge is? Yeah, did we talk about the forge?
Not yet.
Okay, so we had the opportunity to bring an older forge, an old forge. It's really big. They were a lot bigger than that.
Go to 3,000.
What?
How does the forge still go to 3,000?
You have to heat it to that point. So an old forge that they would have had back in the colonial period would have been made out of brick or stone, and they would have used something called coke to heat up the flame. It's called coke, but it's a form of coal, and it would get really hot. The problem with that is it was hard to regulate the heat. With this modern forge, we have a propane tank that feeds it, and we can regulate the heat pretty well. But in an old forge, you couldn't do that.
How many has it made so far?
I don't know. I haven't counted them. So the problem with the older forges is if you didn't have enough people to watch the forge and the metal in the forge while he's twisting or hammering or something, what would happen to the metal? It would absolutely melt. It would be liquid metal. And that blacksmith can't use that very well, can they? But and who would use the cast? Who would do the casting? Good guess. I keep forgetting that one myself. I have to ask Ty. Ty, who uses the liquid metal? A founder. They're the ones that would use liquid metal and pour it into a mold of some sort. Did we talk about the different types of smiths? You have a blacksmith, silversmith, goldsmith, tinsmith, yeah, a farrier, a founder. There's all kinds, a swordsmith, armorsmith. All of those things. There's all kinds of specialties, aren't there? It's pretty neat. Yes.
Isn't gold one of the softest metals?
It is one of the softer metals.
So
Yes.
it's gold? Yeah. So would it be a lot easier?
Yeah, it would be a lot more pliable, especially the purer the gold it was. A lot of times they'll mix gold with another metal to make it a little stronger so it doesn't bend so easily.
You can just hit it with like a normal hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a very rare metal. Do you guys have any other questions?
I use first time you heat it up.
What? I don't know. How many did you put in there, Ty? 5.